Summit topic, Census Bureau data for Asian and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander population. We're delighted to have you with us today in what is the 13th installment of the Census Bureau's 2021 Data Summit series. My name is Charlotte Poi, and I am your host for today. But before I go into the agenda, I'd like to cover some basic information and house rules. This session is being recorded. So this summit will be recorded for the benefit of attendees and other stakeholders who are unable to be present. For those who do not wish to be recorded, please take this time to opt out and drop from this session. Because of the number of participants on this webinar, everyone has been muted. We encourage everyone to utilize the chat instead. We will not be able to answer all questions due to the volume of participants. However, any general questions that are not answered, please contact ask.census.gov. For any other inquiries regarding apportionment or redistricting, please reach out to PIO at pio@census.gov. For your convenience and future reference, please expect a PDF of today's presentation and a resource sheet in 2 business days. Again, this webinar is being recorded and will be available at a later date. So what's the objective of the Data Summit? So designed for the novice data user, the series will present a high-level overview of several data products and demonstrate how they can be used to assist organizations and businesses identify data-driven solutions to challenges. Learn about how your responses to Census Bureau surveys are used to create publicly available data products. At the conclusion of this session, you will have an increased awareness of the vast data products available through U.S. Census Bureau, be better equipped to utilize some of the free online tools available on census.gov, and have resources and toolkits to assist with navigating data available through census.gov. So we offer these summits to thank our many committed 2020 census partners by showing them that the value of partnership extends beyond the decennial count. Census Bureau data can help organizations make really good data-driven decisions. So today's summit is one example of how the Census Bureau also offers support to help you with accessing and understanding these data. So our agenda includes our opening remarks from Ms. Joanne Fields, who's the Government and Public Relations Director for the Asian Pacific Islander Initiative at Imagine Media Group, LLC, followed by Ms. Kawai Samuelu, Executive Director of Empowering Pacific Islander Communities. Following Ms. Samuelu will be our key presenters, Leah Bolden and Luz Castillo, who are both data dissemination specialists from the Customer Liaison and Marketing Services Office, Data Dissemination and Training Branch of the U.S. Census Bureau. After our key presenters, there will be a Q&A session. And then I'll present some Census Bureau resources and we'll also conduct a wrap-up. So before I turn it over to Ms. Fields for opening remarks, I'd like to mention that the apportionment data has already been released to the public. A link to the full release is in the presentation, which will be shared after this webinar. Any media-related inquiries should be referred to PIO at pio@census.gov. As a friendly reminder, we'd like to inform you again that this webinar is being recorded and will be available at a later date. Also, please do expect a PDF of today's presentation and the resource sheet within 2 business days. Okay, so after the census, right, shifts in population and congressional representation among the states require the redrawing of district boundaries within states. So the Census Bureau provides states with the local area population counts that they need to redraw or redistrict their congressional and other legislative boundaries. The full redistricting data with toolkits for ease of use will be delivered by September 30. The Census Bureau will notify the public prior to releasing the data. For more information on redistricting, including links to geographic support products such as the maps, the tables, and files, visit the redistricting press kit at the link listed on this slide. Please note that the data will be released by August 16th However, the full redistricting data with toolkits for ease of use will be made public by September 30th. Our first speaker today is Joanne Fields, Government and Public Relations Director for the Asian Pacific Islander Initiative at Imagine Media Group, LLC. Ms. Fields has extensive experience working at the various levels of government in Southern California and an impressive background as a community leader. She's also played active roles in our 2000, 2010, and 2020 decennial census efforts, both as a staff person and as a community partners collaborations lead. Her time in cross-sector work positions Ms. Fields well to understand the importance of Census Bureau quality data for successful endeavors in her community. Ms. Fields, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining in today's important Census 2020 Data Summit. I am thankful that this is my third decennial, and it is so important for all of us to celebrate the years of hard work and outreach, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. It was a teachable moment for all of us, and we showed how resilient we are as we pivot to ensure that all Asian Pacific Islander communities are counted once and only once, but to ensure that we receive the necessary funding, programs, and services to serve our community. There are so many partners to thank on a national, statewide, and local level. I want to make sure that we realize we did something unprecedented to ensure, again, that we receive services. As you know, COVID-19 just threw out our strategy that some of us were planning to, in some cases, 3 years in advance of the 2020 census. But this is how important these numbers are to us during the pandemic. Planning for emergency services, what languages needed to be translated for public service announcements? Where do we need testing and vaccination pop-ups and treatment in our respective communities? How do we gauge if we're moving the needle in our respective communities? It was also a teachable moment of who we are as an Asian Pacific Islander community. As you know, we are very diverse in just our that label itself. But thankfully, we were able to teach the community at large and within the API community that Asians also include Southeast Asian, Pakistani, Sri Lankan, Bangladesh, our native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander brothers and sisters, Tongan, Samoan, Chamorro, Filipino, Chinese, Vietnamese. It is so diverse. And it was a very exciting journey. At times, it felt like we weren't able to move forward. But again, we were able to pivot. And through the community partnerships, working with the census, working with our elected officials, working in coalition, we were really blessed in California that Governor Newsom and Governor Brown had set aside to supplement outreach. And whereas in San Diego and Imperial County, we formed a Census 2020 coalition with additional outreach funds for community-based organizations to have giveaways. We created videos in language. So again, it is an honor to join all of you today, but let's celebrate the hard work that each and every one of us has done to complete Census 2020 so that we can also prepare for redistricting, which has launched here in the state of California and locally in the county of San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fields, for your thoughtful remarks and just revisiting all the efforts that partners took. So part 2 of our opening remarks is from Tawai Samuelu, who is the daughter of a pastor from Leulu Moenga and a nurse from Salemoa. She also serves as the Executive Director of Empowering Pacific Islander Communities and is a passionate advocate for Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, and who is committed to liberation for all. Introducing Ms. Tawai Samuelu.
Thank you so much for that, Char. Again, as Char said, my name is Tawai Samuelu. My pronouns are she, her, and I am joining you all from the ancestral lands of the Kickapoo. I'm glad to be given this opportunity to talk about our census work, which, in Samoan, we say, "Elesili ta'ile no lil tapua'i." It means that the person in the front is no more important than those behind them. And so, although that I've been the one to be given the privilege and honor of speaking to you all, it's really important that I name all of those who came before me, the many giants who laid the foundation for me to be able to do this work. And also recognize the ways that because of those giants, census data is really census participation is one of the sort of critical parts of EPIC's organizational DNA. That when EPIC was first formed in 2009, it was with this question of what can this group of young NHPI leaders do? What are we uniquely positioned to do? And the charge from elders and other community leaders was around data, that we were a community full of stories with the ability to communicate what was happening. But the question always came back, what are your numbers, right? That we understand that systems often ask us to quantify our suffering, our size, our place in the world. And so census became a core part of that. When our efforts first started out, and I appreciate Joanne really speaking to this, that the pandemic demanded that we pivot, that we change. And what I love is that although folks called COVID-19 unprecedented, for me, it was about turning to more and more proverbs, the ancestral wisdom that demonstrates all of the ways that although many of these things are daunting, that the fact that there's a proverb for everything really shows the ways that our communities have been built for this. So we talked a lot, and much of our campaign was in recognizing voyaging, right? The ways that our voyaging history and our traditional navigation have set us up and given us the tools for navigating spaces that were not created by or for us. And then in particular, this piece around storytelling. That we also know that so many of the narratives that exist about our communities aren't by or for us. And so that data and a full participation in census was about owning our stories, about understanding the ways that these numbers become part of our collective narrative as a community. Also knowing, right, that during COVID-19, that they became especially critical in understanding the deep impact, the devastating impact that it had on Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, that even over a year later, we still have some of the highest rates of COVID of any racial or ethnic population. I mean, we know these things because of census data, right? That data at its most neutral allows us to measure the severity of a problem and the efficacy of a solution. So the other aspect of this that we get very deep in is recognizing, and sitting with that, I think we were also recognizing as we talked to our communities, right? One message is of 10 minutes for 10 years during a pandemic where folks were experiencing not only contracting COVID, but housing insecurity and food insecurity and unemployment, that what does 10 years mean if I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow? So the shift for us was in recognizing and explaining and translating to our communities that census is also intrinsic to your survival. How does this actually help us to survive? How does it become part of our recovery as a whole? So I appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to the ways that this is going to shape our future efforts and help us determine our direction. I also want to commend the census because I think what I want to push and celebrate too is that the census was really critical in disaggregating their efforts, that there was an NHPI specific marketing and outreach model and effort that celebrated the unique values of our community and spoke specifically to our folks. And I also want to push around the ways that we know that data can also be weaponized to tell our communities that they're too small, that it can be a site of erasure, and want to encourage the ways that we actually flip the story, that we decide that if we're going to utilize this data, that we place the inquiry on systems and not our own people. So, thank you.
Mahalo, Tawai, for your thoughtful remarks and inspiring words. And I want to thank you and Joanne also for pointing out that data is numbers, right? And we have a tendency to be quantified, like you said, but also reminding us and just our efforts overall showing that there are stories behind the numbers, and those are important. So thank you both so much. At this time, I would like to introduce our key presenters, Leah, Bolden, and Luz Castillo. Leah has been employed by the Census Bureau for over 19 years, and most recently, Leah led the Northern California Census Partnership and Engagement Program as a partnership coordinator. And currently, as a data dissemination specialist, Leah promotes the use of census data to anyone with an interest or a need to work with this valuable information. Luz most recently served as the Assistant Regional Census Manager for the Community Partnership and Engagement Program for the 2020 Census. She's currently serving as a data dissemination specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau, where she plays a vital role in helping the public understand data. So before I turn the presentation over to Leah and Luz, I'd like to announce that the floor is open for questions while they are presenting. We have a team that will be managing the chat, so please feel free to submit your questions via that chat. Okay, so before we get started, I want to make sure Leah has the floor and the focus of everyone, and then Luz to follow. Okay, ladies, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shar. And I really want to, do a shout out to our guest speakers for your, inspirational words. Thank you to everyone who is attending today's webinar, Census Bureau Data for Asian and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities. Here are our goals for our session: to be better equipped to work with census data for demographic and economic analysis for Asian and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities, to receive an overview of key concepts and data sets available, and to learn how to access key data products, tables, and mapping tools. During this session, I will provide a short overview of the U.S. Census Bureau. We will review race and ethnicity data concepts. Then we move to the American Community Survey, the nation's most current and reliable and accessible data source for local statistics. I will provide basic survey background, review ACS content areas, and describe data products. Then we will review basic census geography and share some resources, and then Luz will jump in with an online demo. Now for a short overview of the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is the largest of 17 primary federal government statistical agencies. Now we are best known for the decennial census. We also conduct more than 130 censuses and surveys of households and businesses across the nation each year. The following programs collect race data. Of course, there's the decennial census, and it will provide a host of standard data products, beginning with the redistricting data, which will give state population counts for race and Hispanic or Latino categories. Later, there'll be other Census Bureau releases that we're all anticipating. Then there's the Population Estimates Program, which produces on a flow basis annual estimates of the population for the United States, its states, counties, cities, and towns, as well as for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Beginning with demographic components of population change at the national, state, and county levels of geography in December, and then ending with population estimates by age, sex, race, ethnicity for the nation's states and counties. Then there's the wonderful American Community Survey. It is the largest federal government survey covering a wide set of demographic, socioeconomic, and housing statistics. We will cover the ACS in more detail later in this webinar. There's the current population survey, which is sponsored jointly by the U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS. And it is the primary source of labor force stats for the population of the United States. There's the annual business survey, or ABS, which provides information on selected economic and demographic characteristics for businesses and business owners by sex, ethnicity, race, and veteran status. The survey is collected from both employer and non-employer businesses. Now let's explore race and ethnicity. I probably don't have to tell you all this, but it's always important to continue to raise the question. Why do we ask a question on race? A question about a person's race is used to create statistics about race and to present other statistics by race groups. These data are required for federal, state, and tribal governments and are critical factors in the basic research behind numerous policies and federal laws, like you see here on this slide. Race data are used in planning and funding government programs that provide funds or services for specific groups. These data are also used to evaluate government programs and policies to ensure they fairly and equitably serve the needs of all racial groups and to monitor compliance with anti-discrimination laws, regulations, and policies. States also use these data to meet legislative redistricting requirements. Now, race, these categories, they're not an attempt to define race biologically, anthropologically, or genetically. The categories on race are based on self-identification and generally reflect a social definition of race. The graphic on this slide is the 2010 brief, overview of race and Hispanic origin. It's a great resource if you want to understand how people responded in the 2010 census. And then we will have more of these briefs to reflect the outcome of the 2020 census. The Census Bureau collects race and ethnicity data according to the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB standards. OMB defines race and ethnicity as two separate concepts, since people of Hispanic or Latino origin may be of any group. OMB ethnicity standards include what? Hispanic or Latino, or not Hispanic or Latino. Then their standards on race includes 5 minimum categories on race: American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and white. And then there's a category called some other race. Multiple race reporting is accepted. People may choose to report more than one race to indicate their racial mixture, like myself, Asian and Black. From the responses of multiple race reporting, the Census Bureau tabulates race in combination and race alone or in combination categories. For example, the race alone for Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. People who responded to the race question by indicating only one race, Native Hawaiian or Samoan or Guamanian or Chamorro. Now, how about the next category, race in combination? So these are individuals that reported more than one detailed Pacific Islander group as part of a larger Pacific Islander race category, Hawaiian and Samoan, or more than, or one of the other 6 race categories, like Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander and white, or Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander and Asian. And then there's the race Pacific, the race alone or in combination, which is Pacific Islander alone or in combination. As an example, this is the combined Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander alone or in combination, and it represents the total Pacific Islander responses tally groups. Okay, let's talk about some visualizations now. This visualization is from the Profile America Facts and Features for May of 2021. It's honoring Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Facts for Features consist of collections of statistics from the Census Bureau's demographic and economic subject areas pertaining to holidays, anniversaries, observances, or topics in the news. Data for this visualization, A More Diverse Nation, is from the Population Estimates Program. The Asian alone population was the fastest growing group from 2000 to 2019, with the growth rate of 82.2% that we see here on this slide, growing from about 10 million in 2000 to nearly 19 million in 2019. The Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander was second with a growth rate of 72.7%, growing from over 370,000 to nearly 600,000 in 2019, compared to the 16.3% growth for the general population that we see here. And in addition to the graphics, Facts for Features has other facts related to the Asian and Pacific Islander populations and related to business, population estimates, and the American Community Survey. So it's really worth going to and taking a look at. Right, the next visualization is from the May 2020 Facts for Features. This graphic shows the growth by some of the detailed Asian groups. The estimated number of Chinese at the top, excluding Taiwanese, is 5.2 million, followed by Asian Indian, 4.6 million, and Filipino at 4.2 million. And we can see down below for the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander population, Native Hawaiian is the largest group at over 600,000. The measurement of race and ethnicity is part of our nation's history. This interactive visualization highlights how the categories used in the decennial census changed over the past 230 years since the first census in 1790. The interactive tool provides decade-by-decade census facts. For example, 1860 was the first census where Chinese is a category, but only in California. Between 1870 census and 1880 census, the flow of immigrants from China started to rise. This was the first use of a national origin category, along with color and race. The 1920 census, the Asian immigrant group had become sizable enough to warrant creating separate categories. So we see here Chinese, Filipino, Japanese, and Korean. Now the 1960 census is significant. Alaska and Hawaii achieved statehood in 1959. The 1960 census was the first decennial that incorporated Alaskan and Pacific Islander race categories. Eskimo and Aleut in Alaska only, and Hawaii and part Hawaiian identified in Hawaii only. And then we also see in 1980, in response to immigration patterns, Vietnamese was added to the Asian category, and Guamanian and Samoan were introduced to the race question under Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. This is a brilliant interactive graphic. I highly invite you to go and check it out, just to understand how race has morphed over time, just based on the changes in this nation. Now we're going to move to the American Community Survey. The American Community Survey is the nation's most reliable and accessible data source. The survey is sent to 3.5 million addresses per year. It produces detailed population and housing estimates each year. It produces critical information on small areas and small population groups, covering over 40+ topics and supporting over 300 known federal government uses. There are 3 annual releases each year. There's a 1-year estimate for populations over 65,000. There's a 1-year supplemental estimate for populations over 20,000. And then there's the 5-year estimate that's for all areas and for smaller populations. Now let's talk about the ACS content areas. The content collected by the American Community Survey can be grouped into 2 broad areas: population and housing. Under population, there are 3 main types of characteristics we see here on this slide. There are social, demographic, and economic characteristics, and then there's housing. The American Community Survey collects basic demographic characteristics, such as age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin. This is the same information that is collected on the decennial census, showed here in red. Then there's social characteristics, including topics like education, marital status, fertility, disability status, place of birth, veterans, and others. There's economic characteristics, including topics as employment status, income, commuting to work, occupation, industry, health insurance, and others. And then there's housing characteristics, including topics such as occupancy and about the structure itself, which includes computer and internet use, the home value, housing costs, includes the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, utilities, plumbing, and others. And we can see here tenure and occupancy were also collected in the 2020 census. So let's talk about data product types. The Census Bureau products can be a profile, tables, or they could be a summary file. Profiles offer a broad look at a community's characteristics, including many different variables. They really do give you this snapshot, and is based on geography or the population is at the center of that profile. So the major data economic, housing, and demographic, and they give a broad statistical view of a particular geography. The data are presented as population estimates and percentages. There are selected population tables. They're available for selected race, Hispanic origin, tribal, and ancestry populations, which I will review in the next slide. There's also a selected population profile, the SO201. Right now, there's the 1 year is available, and Luz will walk you through that when she does her live demo. There are comparison profiles, which are similar to data profiles, but also include comparisons from the past year or the past 5 years, depending on what data set you're looking at. These tables also include statistical significance testing. So these are also good to look at if you want to compare year after year to see if there really is a change on that particular variable. We threw in detailed tables because they're going to be, in many cases, your go-to table. Detailed tables contain the most detailed cross-tabulations and provide the most detail on all topics and geography. The American Community Survey detailed tables begin with the letter B for base table. More about the selected population tables. Every 5 years, the Census Bureau releases 2 data products containing the greatest level of statistical detail for specific population groups. These are called selected population tables, and they're available. The latest is available for 2011 and 2015. There's also the American Indian Alaska Native tables available for selected tribal populations with more detailed tribal categories compared to those in the selected population tables. And we can see for the SPT, 416 population groups are represented, and for tribal, over 1,000. There are some rules to the selected population table. There has to be at least 7,000 of that population nationally. And for the tables to be published, there has to be at least 50 members in the specific geographic area that you're interested in. And there is some technical documentation where you can find a listing of the population groups and their race codes on the American Community Survey homepage. I'll show you that at the end of my presentation. Here's a visual of our detailed tables. You know, for selected tables, you could see here, there's, for look under Asian, so there's going to be some choices in terms of the detailed groups that you're going to be able to select on data.census.gov, and I just put a sampling on here. And for the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander detailed groups, another word you may hear is iterated, so which means detailed. So we have the base group Asian, the base group Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, and then you're going to have some of those detailed or iterated groups. And then that's where, you know, the selected population profile comes in. And here's an example on data.census.gov. So under topics, under race and ethnicity, I'm going to select Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. Here I'm going to select detailed Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. And now I can see here the detailed Native Hawaiian iterated groups with their associated codes. In terms of table ID, the B table, the base table. For selected tables, an alphabetical suffix follows to indicate that the table is repeated for the 9 major race and Hispanic and Latino groups. For example, base table ending in D will be tables specific to the Asian alone population. If the table ends in E, it is going to be specific to the Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander alone population. Now, what does that mean in terms of how that table gets broken down under our selected population detailed tables? So here is an example of a table ID, okay? So B is the data product type, base table, AKA detailed table. 06 is the subject, the place of birth, and one of the things I didn't mention there are subject tables, and that subject 06 will run through that, the subject table as well. There's sequential numbers, 004. It can be 2 or 3 digits, and that sequential number is kind of a unique table identifier within the subject. And then there's letter D here for Asian alone. So the B06004D is an example here, the place of birth, Asian alone in the United States. This is taken from data.census.gov. So just understanding table ID is one of the things you're going to be able to do as you get really good at working on data.census.gov is actually type in a table number. And that's really going to help streamline your search. All right, moving to geography. Moving to geography now. Census geography is really important because it provides the framework for census data collection and tabulation. Okay, so you have to have some understanding of geographies because when you're going into search, you're going to need to select the geographic area. The default will also always be the nation, but if you're looking for something more community oriented, then you're going to look for zip codes or census tracts. Okay, so and then Luz will go through that. The image on this slide shows some of the geographies for which ACS data are produced and the relationship between them. Lower geographic areas fit neatly within the larger areas, directly connected by lines. For example, school districts, congressional districts, legislative districts fit neatly within states and do not cross the state boundaries. However, it may cross boundaries of counties or metropolitan areas. We see here that the American Indian, Alaska Native areas and Hawaiian homelands fall under the nation. So in order to find, for example, Hawaiian homelands within a state, there's going to be a particularly geographic summary code that you're going to use. And Luz will walk you through that. So this understanding how the geography is situated in census tabulation will help you understand what you need to do during your search process. And so the HCS is really unique in that it does provide data down to block groups. So we can build a community looking at block groups and census tracts. So there's more on geography. I'm just going to cover one slide today. But again, when we do future webinars, we can talk more in detail. In terms of resources, there is a particular page that I go to often. It's the Race and Ethnicity in American Indian Alaska Native data page off of the American Community Survey. So we see here American under surveys and programs, American Community Survey. Under American Community Survey data, that's pretty hard to see, there is Race, Ethnicity, and American Indian Alaska Native data. So to find out more information about the selected population tables that we talked about, or the American Indian Alaska Native tables, this is where you want to go. And they also have what I mentioned, the Race and Ethnicity and American Indian Alaska Native documentation page, where you can get more information about the available tables, geographies, population groups, and also some comparison guidance. It also will offer, for example, a link to our Census Academy, where there's, in this case, a pre-release webinar where they are talking about detailed population groups. So there's, lots of choice for you. So I recommend you take a look at that site and just as you begin to look at, what's next in your research. please reach out to the data dissemination team to schedule localized and tailored trainings for your organization. On the Census Academy, census.gov/academy page, there are quick 3 to 7 minute videos on all topics. We call them data gems. We also have a library of both what's upcoming and archived, where you can take a look at some trainings in pretty much every single area in terms of our Census Bureau programs or navigation. So please reach out to us. Here's the contact information. The next one is here's Luz and our contact information, but because this is a national webinar, I highly recommend that you go to census.askdata@census.gov or call the 1-844-ASK-DATA site. So, and that will, put you in touch with the right trainer for you at your location. So at this point, I'm going to turn control of, let me see if I can find it. Okay. Over to Luz. I can find her here. Okay, nope. All right, excuse me for 1 second. I got to look for her name here. Here we go. Okay, Luz has it. Okay, take it away, Luz. Looks like you have control now.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, my name is Luz Castillo, and Leah and I are 2 of many data dissemination specialists across the nation that are here to assist data users like yourself in understanding what data is available through the census and also how to access it. So today I will provide a high-level demonstration on how to access data from data.census.gov, which you see here on the screen. Please note that this is not a full training session, as I will provide only a few examples in a short period of time. I will highlight some of the data available and some of the features on the system on data.census.gov. So for more in-depth training that's customized to your organization's needs, we do encourage you to reach out to our data dissemination and training branch. Leah shared the contact info a few slides back, and all of our trainings are provided free of cost. So I will start the demonstration from data.census.gov. We do recommend that when you do go to this website, you use Chrome for better performance and for better speed. This is the landing page. In the middle of the screen, we have what is called the single search bar. That is a great place to start if you just want to see what data is available for a specific geography. So let's say you're interested in the state of Hawaii, you can just type in Hawaii, click search, and see all of the data that is available for that geography. Or if you want something more specific, let's say that you're looking for poverty data for Sacramento County, you can type poverty for Sacramento County and click search. But today in our demonstration, I will use advanced search, which is right below. This is where you will go if you're going to be accessing more complex topics, such as detailed race and ethnicity groups. Also, if you're going to compare multiple geographies at a time, which I will be doing today. So for today, I will be using advanced search. Note that there's also a help button in the middle. This is a great place to go to access frequently asked questions and also to access additional resources on how to better navigate through this site. We also have a feedback button. So please let us know how we can improve data.census.gov to make this site more user-friendly. Our developers are constantly looking at the feedback, so please send us your feedback if you have any great ideas on how to make this better. So let's go ahead and get started with the first example. We will begin by accessing population counts for subgroups within both the Asian and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander race categories. So first, I will show you how to access data for Asian race groups for all counties in California. So I will go to advanced search, and this is what advanced search looks like. You want to scroll down to the section called Browse Filters, and you can access our filter data by topics that you're interested in, by geographies, by a particular year, a particular survey, if you're accessing our economic data, also by the NAICS codes. So there is no right or wrong way of starting your query, but what you will notice in all of my examples, I have the preference of starting with geography, but again, you can start your query any way that you want. So I will click on geography, and the first panel that opens up asks me, you know, what geography do I want data for? I want counties in California. So I will click on county. Then you notice here that says within state, and I want it within California. Now, the next panel will allow me to select all counties in California. Also note that that you have all the counties available here, and so you would be able to individually select them if you wanted to. So now that I've selected my counties, next I am going to click on topics all the way on the left-hand side. I'm going back to the left where it says Browse Filters. Click on topics. And so here are some of the topics that I can get data for. I will click on race and ethnicity. And you will see multiple options. I want data for the Asian race group. And for this particular example, I will click on the very top one that says Asian. This will give me data for the general Asian category, race category that individuals selected on the census questionnaire. Now I will click search. And so now this page will give me all the results from the query I just entered. And so you can read the table names. If you already had a specific table ID, as Leah mentioned earlier, you can look for that. So I will scroll down, and I'm looking for this table, Asian alone or in any combination by selected groups, and that is the keyword, selected groups. I want more population count data for all the groups within the Asian race category. You can see that it comes from the American Community Survey. You can see the years this table's available and the table ID. So I will click on it. And so now let me explain this table. It's coming from our 5-year estimate. You will see all the counties listed across. So if I keep scrolling to my right, I will see the data for 58 counties. So this is a fairly large table. Notice on the first column label, you will see the total groups tallies. So you will see the total for the Asian population, for example, for Alameda County. And then you will see all the groups below, the population count for Asian Indian, Bangladeshi, Bhutanese, Burmese, Cambodian, Chinese except Taiwanese, Filipino, Hmong, Indonesian, Japanese, Korean, Laotian, Malaysian, Mongolian, Nepalese, and so forth. I won't read all of them, although I almost went through the whole list. But I want to show you, given that this is a very big table, I want to show you a feature that I like on data.census.gov. So I will click on the Customize Table up at the top right-hand corner. And note that there is a map feature up on the top. I have my cursor over it, so hopefully you can see that. I will click on the map feature. And so now it'll zoom into California. Notice the legend on the left-hand side of the screen. So this is just giving me the total population count for the Asians in total. So I can click, for example, up north, I can click on this dark color. That's for Santa Clara County, has an estimated population of 788,514 Asians. I can click, for example, in San Diego, and see the estimated population of 501,334. Here up at the top where you see total groups tallied, you can click on that drop down, and now you can go through the individual groups. So let's say I'm working with the Cambodian community. I will click on Cambodian. And so now here, let me move this map this way. You can see where you are concentrations of the Cambodian population in the state. So let me click on this county here in the middle. You will see that that's San Joaquin County with just under 12,000 estimated population. We also have Fresno County here, estimated population of 6,219. And again, I can keep clicking on any of the counties of interest, and I'll just do one more. Let's say we're interested in, or we're working with the Hmong community. And so now you will see that Fresno County is one of the darker shaded counties. So we'll click on it, estimated population, 34,747. And then you'll see up here, Sacramento County. So again, very nice and user-friendly. And if you're interested in data just for one population and you don't want to download the entire table, this is another feature that I like. On the left-hand side, if you click on View Table, I was just getting data from the Hmong community, so I can just copy and paste this data. For example, I can do Control-All, do a right-click, and copy with headers so that I have the header on the top. So I don't have to download that entire table. I will only get through this feature download for that specific population group that I'm interested in. You see the 58 counties. I can copy and paste that into an Excel document. Okay, so this is the first example. I'm going to go here to the Census Bureau logo on the left-hand corner up at the top, and I will do the same type of example, but for the Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander race category. And instead of looking at counties, we will do all states in the United States. So I will click, again, Advanced Search. I like to start my query through geography. I will select state. And now I want all states in the United States. But as you can see, I can select one or more states individually. Now, again, I will go back to the left-hand side under Browse Filters, and now click on Topics. I will go down to Race and Ethnicity. And here we see Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. For this category, race category, it has the little box here on this panel, so I will click on it. Note this selected filters down below. Think of this as your shopping cart for the data that you're looking for. So whatever you see down here is what you will get. So at this point, I will get data for the Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander race category for all states in the United States. That is what I want, so I will select Search. And similar, you have, again, the tables. I will go down to the table that I was looking for. Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander alone or in any combination by selected groups. Again, that is my keyword. Again, you'll see American Community Survey, the years that the data is available, and the table ID. In case you want to come back later on to look at this table again, you can take note of that table ID. So I will click on this. For this group, you will see that there is no data for certain states, but again, you will see here the labels for the different groups that are available. So I will go to Customize Table and again, show you the mapping feature. Okay, so I'm actually going to zoom out so that we can see Hawaii. So this is giving me the total for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander so that you can see, of course, in Hawaii. If I click on it, okay, and right now it's not giving you the data, but okay, for California, you can see an estimated 346,003 Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, and then you can see all the other states where you do have those populations. So if you're interested, you can quickly click on it and see what the estimated population is. And then again, I can go down to my drop down. So I'll just give a few examples. We'll do Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander. So you will see Hawaii and California have the greater population. Florida with an estimated 10,473. We have North Carolina with just under 7,500. And then we have Ohio with just above 7,700. I'll just do one more quick example. I could select Samoan. And let me close this box. You can see here in Texas, over 8,000. And you even see here in the middle, Missouri, just under 6,000. Utah has also a population of just under 19,000 for the Samoan population. So again, this is a great tool when you are comparing like geographies, like counties to other counties, states to other states. You can use the mapping feature to quickly look at data. So again, something that I really like using a lot. So now let's go back to the left-hand corner to United States Census Bureau to go back to our landing page. Okay, so in this next exercise, we will focus on getting demographic, social, economic, and housing data for detailed race groups. So as Leah mentioned earlier, the census provides data for detailed race groups through special population tables and special population profiles. So we will click Advanced Search. And so I will start with my geography. In this example, I will only look at 3 counties. So under geography, I want county level data and within California. And the 3 counties that I want data for today is, let's see, Los Angeles County, Orange County, and we will do San Diego. So we selected our geographies. As you can see, they're listed below in the selected filters. Now, we will go to topics on the left-hand side again. We will go to race and ethnicity. And first, I will start with the Asian race group. And in my previous example, I just selected the first one. But if you go to the bottom, there's detailed Asian alone and detailed Asian alone or in any combination. For this example, I will use the bottom one, which I would say is the most comprehensive one in terms of including everybody that identified as Asian. And then you will see all the groups. You see Asian, Indian, Bangladeshi, Cambodian, Chinese, and so forth. So you can get data for these specific groups. So in this example, I will select Chinese alone or in any combination. And I will go to Filipino. Now, I also want data for Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders. So I'm going back to this column that says race and ethnicity, and I will select Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander. It refreshed. So now you'll see here the groups for detailed Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander, and I have my different individual detailed groups. For this example, I will select Native Hawaiian alone or in any combination. Okay, so now here I have my geography selected. If I click on more, I can see everything that I've already selected in terms of my race categories. It is what I want, so I will select search. Okay. So I want to talk about 2 tables. The first one is the selected population profile in the United States. Note that, again, everything's coming from the American Community Survey. And these are one-year estimates. And Leah had mentioned this table before, S0201. So let me click on it to show you what is available. So first, to talk about the geographies, these are the one-year estimates. In LA County, I have data for the Chinese alone or in any combination, and for Filipino alone or in any combination. I was not able to get data for Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders. The reason why is because it is a one-year estimate, and in order to get data for any group, they need to have a population of 65,000 or above. So for Chinese alone, you will see that in LA County, we have an estimated population of just over 543,000. And for Filipino alone or in any combination, we have a population of over 400,000. So they met that 65,000 threshold. If you look at the other counties, for Orange County, we have Chinese alone or in any combination. We have the Filipino data. For San Diego, again, Chinese alone or in any combination, and Filipino. So this is the data that we're able to get for the one-year estimate. So again, you need to have those bigger groups. But let me show you the table. It's very detailed. It gives you a lot of data about demographics, socioeconomic, and housing characteristics. So I'll just quickly go through it, but you will see you'll get total population data, sex and age data. Keep scrolling down, relationship data, households by type, marital status, school enrollment, educational attainment, fertility, responsibility for grandchildren, veterans data, disability status, residence 1 year ago, place of birth, citizenship status, world region of birth for the foreign-born population, language spoken at home. Then we have all the employment data, so I won't go through all of it, but you have occupation, commuting to work, what industry people work in. Then we have all the income data. If you keep scrolling down, we'll get health insurance data, and then all the housing data. Some questions about the housing, whether occupied, vacant, when it was built, how they heat the home, and then also how much do people pay for their housing. So if you're interested in the affordability, you can see for owner-occupied housing units what percentage of people's income is spent on housing, and if they rent the same, how much of their income goes to pay for their rent. So again, a lot of data in one table, but it is limited to those bigger groups. So now, if you look here on the left-hand side, you will see the special population tables. These are from the 5-year estimate. So let me click, let's see, sex by age. Okay, so now note up at the top, you have data 5-year estimate. So it collects data over a 5-year period. We have a bigger sample size, and now you're being able to get data for smaller population groups. So now if you look at these tables, which the table IDs start with the letter B. Now for LA County, you will see that we have Chinese, Filipino, and now we have data for Native Hawaiian alone or in any combination. And you can see what the estimated population is, 12,579. Again, that's the estimate. If I go to Orange County, you see Chinese, Filipino. You can also see data for the Native Hawaiian alone or in combination with just under 6,000 estimated population. And in San Diego, here you see that we also have data for Native Hawaiian alone or in any combination with just under 7,500. So as you can see, that through these tables, special population tables, we're able to get data for smaller population groups. So if at first you're looking for data and you can't find what you're looking for, then the special population tables may have it as well. But we do have thresholds that must be met so that we can protect the confidentiality of those that are responding. So I have one more quick exercise to show you. For those of you joining us from Hawaii, I will show you how to quickly select the native Hawaiian homeland geography so that you can get the data that you need for those particular geographies. So again, I went to the census logo, took me to the landing page, again, advanced search. I will go to geography. And if you scroll down, we do have a geography called American Indian Area, Alaska Native Area, Hawaiian Homeland. If I click on it, it allows me to select all of those areas within the United States, or I can select them. And so you will see a list of hundreds of geographies, and it will take a long time to identify those specific to Hawaii. So what I will do is click here under geography, show summary levels. And if you're interested in this geography, note that you will need summary level 280. So now I will scroll down to 280. Okay, here we go. American Indian Area, Alaska Native Area, Hawaiian Homeland within state. So that is the key, within the state. So now it's going to allow me to select what state I want data for. So I will select Hawaii. And now I can select here all the Hawaiian homelands in Hawaii, or I can see them individually and select only those that I want. In this example, I would just also go to topics. Let's just say that I want median household income. For those geographies, I will click on income and poverty. Let's see, I want income and earnings. And again, income and earnings, and click search. And so now I can again look through these tables. These are detailed tables, so they cross-tabulate data with different topics. So here we see median income in the past 12 months, but then we'll see that it's also cross-tabulated with place of birth. So I will click on it. If I just want median income, this row that's highlighted right now in gray will give me the median income, and then you will see the different Hawaiian homelands listed across. Some of them will have data, some will not. Again, depending on whether they have a population, first of all, and then if they do have a population, if they meet the thresholds. So I know I went through a lot of examples very fast. So this concludes my demonstration for now, but as we mentioned earlier, please reach out to our data dissemination and training branch to request training for you and your organizations free of cost. We will customize them to your geographies and for your topics of interest. You can send us an email at census.askdata@census.gov. And I will now turn it over to Charlotte. Charlotte, the floor is yours.
Mahalo, Luz, for that just engaging and interactive examples. And thank you, Leah, for starting off that presentation with a great overview. As you just can see, the amount of data that the Census Bureau has available really is amazing, right? So at this time, we'd like to answer some other questions that our audience has. Let's see, is there anything? I know the chat box was blowing up and our team was doing its best to meet those. So let's see, here we go. The first question from, let me see. Do we have data on the movements of people, for example, migration per state and per county by race or ethnicity? That was from Carla Hotstetter. So let's take that first one. Leah or Luz?
You know, there is a tool, I can't recall it now, where it does look at migration patterns. So, you know, again, state to state and in counties, like we were looking at, for example, the number of counties in LA and who was moving where. But it's in terms of race, I don't know if it's total population or we broke it down by race. That piece I do not recall. Luz, do you have a sense of, was race included or is just total population shift?
Right. If I remember correctly, yes, we do have a tool, and I'm trying to remember if it's called Census Explorer, but it does look at migration. If it does have it, I believe it'll just have it for the general race categories. It will not go into the detailed groups. When I share the special population profile, there is a category called residents 1 year ago, where it allows you to see whether people moved in the past year or whether they're living in the same place that they moved a year ago. And if they did move, did they move within the county? Did they move in from a different county? So we do have some data available. So please reach out to us and then we can look at it further to see what data we can provide.
Mahalo, Leah. Okay, one more. Can data on Native Hawaiian-owned businesses also be pulled through this site? I think that was for the last example, or the example you were doing, Luz.
For this day, let me see, American Community Survey does not collect data on business ownership, but we do have the survey of business owners, and which Leah touched upon earlier. And so it does have some limited data by race and ethnicity. So yes, so we do have some data, but through a different survey.
Okay, and I think there's one more that came from Julie. Joanne, how would you identify Native Hawaiians with 50% or more blood quantum? So she knows this doesn't specifically exist, but is there a proxy or a workaround or some other tool similar to getting that information that you know?
Right. So the census does not collect the data. Again, it's based on self-identification. So it is however that individual identifies. And if they mark as a box Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander or a specific or another race group, you know, that is how they identify and that is how we collect the data and present it. So it is based on the individuals. We don't have any ability to determine that percentages.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. Oops. There we go. Oh. Let me move this over. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to the screen. Oh. Okay. There are, can the total population be pulled at the same time in the same table as the specific NHPI subgroup?
Right. So when you do pull data for the specific race or ethnic groups, it only gives you the total population for those groups. It does not give you the overall population. So it would be two separate queries, one to get the data for your specific detailed group and one for the general population. So I hope that that answers your question.
Yes. Okay. All right. I know there's probably more questions that are coming up, but the interest of time, right, and just to remind you folks that we can request additional information from ask.census at census.gov. But I want to move us on a little bit more and try and finish this out and give you contact information for your region, okay? So I want to say thank you again to Leah and Luz for that great presentation, and that does conclude our Q&A portion. Thank you everybody who submitted really, really great and engaging questions. Continuing on what has been discussed, I would also like to show you some other very important resources before we conclude. Because it really, if you enjoyed today's summit, there is a lot more where that came from. Okay, and then once again, there's so much at your fingertips on census.gov's Census Academy page. That's where you can find valuable information on data dissemination and training, which is where a lot of your inquiries, are leading to that kind of response you want from. There are options to request a free data training for your organization, right? Free of charge, and you can't beat that. It's very similar to what we had today, but like Lou said, it was just a really brief overview today, but you can request something that's more detailed and specific for your needs. You can also receive our data gems, which are short how-to videos aimed at helping you increase your knowledge of census data. And guess what? We can deliver those to your inbox, and you can also gain access to our easy learn at your own pace tutorials. So we're really here for you, right, beyond just today. And you can interact with our instructors on those webinars as well. Okay. So to expand a little bit more on what I just said, the Census Bureau has a team of specialists who can assist in bringing the world of data to you by providing trainings, workshops, and presentations to you and your organization at no cost. So our team offers presentations and trainings tailored to the customer's needs, to your needs, right? And they can show you a variety of census data tools, data sets, and programs, both virtually and in person. However, I do want to note that for now, still yet, in-person data services are currently suspended or on hold due to COVID restrictions, okay? Now, let me show you something else. We have several data summits that we are presenting between now and the month of August. You can find all the information on the 2021 Data Summit page on census.gov. In the search bar at the top, you just simply type in 2021 Data Summit Series to land at the page seen on this slide. So there are currently 19 options, right? And to view them all, just make sure to click Show More. And then look to see which one suits your needs, and you can register. It's a one-stop shop. Okay, and the recordings of some of the past data summits are now available. And you can find the recorded versions on this same 2021 Data Summit Series page. So ladies and gentlemen, we do want to know your thoughts because there's always room for improvement, right? There are two ways to tell us what you thought about today's session. First, you can contact your regional office via phone or email, and then I'll give you that contact information in just a little bit. Feel free also to contact the regional office that handles your state, or as you've been doing, right, over the last year, connect with your local partnership specialist for any of your needs and their thoughts, and they'll share that with us as well. So here we go. Let me share with you some information about our regional offices. Okay, so the Atlanta Region Office, you can contact them at atlanta.regional.office@census.gov. And the Chicago Regional Office can be contacted at chicago.regional.office@census.gov. Bear with me, we have a few regions to get through. The Denver Regional Office, you can email at denver.regional.office@census.gov. And the Los Angeles Regional Office at los.angeles.regional.office@census.gov. Okay, the New York Regional Office is new.york.regional.office@census.gov. And Philadelphia is philadelphia.regional.office@census.gov. So once again, please feel free to contact either the regional office directly that handles your state, or like you've been doing, right, connect with your local partnership specialist for any of your needs. And as I said, You share your thoughts with them, your needs, your ideas, and they'll connect and share with us as well. So thank you, folks. Mahalo for joining us today for our series of data summits. This session was Census Bureau data for Asian and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander population. I want to thank Census leadership, our speakers, Joanne Fields and Tavai Samuelu, and our key presenters, Leah, Bolden, and Luz Castillo. I also want to thank our partners who have hung in there with us, pivoted with us over these last year to 2 years, and just say thank you so much. So our objectives for this summit, right, is, as a quick review, was to increase awareness of the vast data products available through U.S. Census Bureau, to be better equipped to utilize some of the free online tools available on census.gov, and have resources and toolkits to assist with navigating data that's available through census.gov. Everyone, again, we ask and encourage you to provide feedback. We really want you to tell us if you thought something was missing, what you found of value, what you would like to hear more of or less of. And we appreciate what we call in Hawaii, mana'o, right? Your thoughts, your ideas, your feedback, so that we can improve these sessions. And at this point, this concludes our webinar today. And as a friendly reminder, please expect a PDF of today's presentation and a resource sheet within 2 business days. And also, the webinar was recorded and will be available at a later date. So mahalo everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Aloha, ahui ho, as we say in Hawaii, until we meet again. You may disconnect at this time.